So when it comes to weather, it's a bit of a mixed bag for me really, because I come from London, as most of you know by now, and well, the weather in London is not much to write home about, to be fair. It is predominantly rain, grey skies and just cold temperatures. And so living in South Italy, where the weather is predominantly warm and beautiful for the majority of the year, is a bit of a novel concept for me. Like, I still struggle to believe that it doesn't get really cold here in Palermo until late December, early January. Like, that blows my mind, because in the UK, it's pretty chilly even now in October. And so that aspect I absolutely love. It makes me really happy to live in a place where there is predominant blue sky and sunshine. But the part that kind of taints that a little bit for me is the summer months, because the summers here are a little bit unbearable, particularly so in the last couple of years. I have noticed that every summer seems to be that little bit hotter than the one before. And it's not even just like the temperature on paper, but it's the humidity, because the humidity makes everything feel so much hotter than it actually is. And it's difficult because my summers are not sitting at the beach every single day as if it's a holiday. I've still got to work, I've still got to live my normal life here. And to find the energy to do the things that I have to do is really, really tough. And so for me, that part I find really difficult. And not only that, but this year especially, I've been craving an autumn season, because as I've just said before, here in Palermo it stays pretty mild until late December. So for me it just feels like it's a version of late summer. But in the UK, like, the leaves change colour and it becomes a bit cooler, and people start to wear cardigans and jumpers and light their fires, and it's that whole cosy aspect that I actually miss. And so this year especially, I've been like, gosh, I really want to have a grey, gloomy day, because, you know, there's something really cozy about that, especially if you don't have to leave your house. So for this reason, I'm going to give this particular aspect of life here a solid 3 out of 5, because I do feel super happy about the weather. I do find that the weather influences the way I feel. And I'm telling you, this is the reason why people in the UK, like, the minute, the literal second that the sun comes out, people lose their minds. Like, I've seen so many funny reels on Instagram and shorts here on YouTube of people wearing like a bit of everything and being like, this is how you dress in the UK. Like, and it's true, like, you never know what to wear because the weather is just so bizarre. But I don't know, I kind of feel like it's nice to have proper seasons. It's nice to have a change in weather, and it's nice to have temperatures that you can feel comfortable in, and you can still go about your day-to-day life and not feel like you are literally about to collapse. So this is the reason why I have given this a 3 out of 5. So when it comes to food, this is a really easy topic for me to talk about, because my diet is 1,000,000% better living here in Italy than it ever was in the UK. Something that I've really come to learn, which I speak about as well in this video up here, is just how much love, passion and attention goes into preparing dishes here in Italy. It's not just something to do, it's not just a necessity, it's actual love that goes into the food preparation here, and you feel it. And it sounds really nuts, but I understand a dish that somebody has just made because they have to make it, compared to a dish where somebody has spent hours slaving away to create something exquisite. You taste the love in the food, and this is something that I really appreciate here in Italy. And also, like, the attention to detail for ingredients, and really being mindful of using like the freshest produce wherever you can. I love the fact that the fruit and vegetable stalls here will only have what is in season at that time. It's not like if you go to the UK, you can find strawberries year round and you can find different fruit available all the time because it is imported. Here in Italy, predominantly, they try to keep the fruit in season. So you only find what you can eat in season at that time. So it's always going to be the freshest available. And I really appreciate that. And I also really appreciate the heritage that goes into so many dishes here. Like, a lot of recipes have been handed down through many generations, and you know, I love that. I love that there is a story behind the food that is made here, and I just love the fact that food is just an integral part of life here. You know, meal times are not just something to quickly eat your food and run. They're an occasion, they're an event. And you know, especially on Sunday lunch times, you know, people are together and, you know, they're eating together, and it's a moment to share your news, to share your time, and to eat good food. And so for me, this is 5 out of 5, 100%. The food here is magnificent. The only thing that I really struggle with a little bit still is the portion size. And sometimes I still get caught out by, I don't know, I'll be eating a plate of pasta and I'll forget that there's a second plate to come. I recently went to a wedding and I was like eating away and thinking this is delicious, and then I remembered there were like at least 2 or 3 more courses still to come. So those little things catch me out sometimes because I'm not used to eating such big quantities of food, but I have definitely adjusted much more to the way that food is here, the way it's presented, the integral part it plays to life here. It's a really beautiful thing, and so food here definitely makes me happy. I definitely look forward to lunchtime and dinner time. The only thing that I want to do more of is more cooking, because I feel a bit disappointed that I can't cook Italian food the way that I would like to. There are a couple of dishes that I'm pretty okay at, but it's not what I would say I'm proud of. So it's something that I really want to improve upon. But yeah, food is a wonderful thing here and it definitely makes me happy. Okay, so when it comes to work, this again is a bit of a mixed bag for me, because I'm very, very thankful of the fact that when I stepped foot off the plane back in August 2018, I had a job waiting for me. And ever since that moment to now, I have always had continuous employment here. And I know how fortunate I am to say this, particularly because there are so many Italian people here who are unable to find work. And so before I even begin to talk about how I feel about working here in Italy, there is that moment of appreciation, because I know not everybody is as fortunate as me. And it could be argued it's because I speak English and I'm a mother tongue teacher and rah, rah, rah. But essentially, that aside, I've been working here continuously and I'm super, super thankful for that. But when it comes to work here, I don't find work particularly easy here in Italy. I do find there is a different mindset to the working culture and a different way to approach things that kind of goes against what I've been used to. Now, I always think that everything in life teaches you something. And so predominantly, a lot of the things that I experience at work go on to teach me lessons that I can later use in my own life. But I do find that the mindset towards work here is very different to what I'm used to and very different to what I believe in as well. Like, there is a lot of acceptance here for things that people shouldn't accept, and a lot of like, oh, va bene, pazienza, for situations where people need to have more of a backbone and speak up. And I know that this is deeply embedded in the culture here of, you know, especially in the South, life being difficult and people having to just survive and shut up and do their job, you know. Like, I understand that there is a culture here and there is a history here that has meant that the working conditions are like this for a lot of people. But it's strange for me, I have to be honest, just the array of contracts that you can receive and the fact that you don't immediately get given a contract necessarily, which is indeterminato, which means without an expiry date. And so I guess the key thing for me about work has been that I've learned to adapt. I've learned to change like the way that I approach the work I do, and also the way that I view my employers, because I kind of feel like, you know, you can't stay rigid when you live in another country. You have to change your ways. It doesn't mean that you have to lose your beliefs and your values and what's important to you, but you cannot continuously be comparing your working conditions to what you're used to in your past. You just can't. It's going to make you really miserable and it's not going to help you in the present moment. And so a lot of acceptance around the working conditions here is something that I've been like working on and trying to improve. But I do find the working culture here difficult. I do find it very demanding. I do think that there is a high expectation put on employees, and sometimes you're not necessarily valued or respected in the way that you should be, and this goes across all sectors and all areas of work. So I'm going to give this a 3 out of 5. I feel like, I'm really fortunate for my experiences. I'm really fortunate that I've been lucky in terms of always having continuous employment and learning so much along the way from the different people that I've worked for. But I also recognise that some working conditions here for people are not healthy, and they do not encourage you to grow, and there is this culture here that there is a lack of opportunity, and this is why people move to the north of Italy or outside of Italy altogether, because they don't see opportunity here in the south of Italy. And it's a shame, because I see a lot of potential here, but I think the bureaucracy makes it super difficult. And if there's no investment from big businesses and companies into this region of Italy, then the opportunities are naturally going to be lacking. So I think there is a lot that goes into it, but for me it's middle of the road. It's 3 out of 5 because I kind of feel that I'm thankful for my experiences, but I wouldn't say that this is the best country that I've ever worked in. Well, I can only compare it to the UK, but I will say the conditions in the UK are somewhat better. Not perfect. I feel like I have to do all these disclaimers. I'm anticipating the comments. They're not perfect, but there are many things that are better. So yes, the 3 out of 5. When it comes to the way of life here, for me this is twofold. It's divided into 2 camps, the pace of life and also the mindset and mentality of people here. Now, if we're going to go with the pace of life, this is something I struggle with sometimes because I'm definitely a bit of a go-getter. I'm ambitious, I want to do things, I want to achieve things. And sometimes the pace of life here, I feel like I'm kind of stuck in slow-mo trying to get things done. And I get it, there is a different vibe here in the south of Italy. There is on the one hand a culture where people are like running a little bit, they're hustling, they're trying to survive. But then you're kind of go to South Italy in the afternoons and everything's stopped still for like a couple of hours and nothing's open. So you've got this kind of contradiction, I would suggest. And the same on a Sunday as well. Everything is kind of still and has stopped in that way. But I do appreciate the fact that a lot of people here live more in the moment. And I notice this a lot. So if I ask an Italian person, what do they plan to do in the next 5 to 10 years? A lot of people are like, I don't like to make plans, I like to live in the moment. Or they can't really go beyond like 2 or 3 years. And I get that because let's face it, we're all predicting that we're even going to be alive in 10 years from now. It's a very big question to answer. But I do find that I am somebody who likes to have goals and objectives and things to work towards, because my biggest fear is that if I don't have something that I'm working towards, I'm going to stagnate. I'm going to wake up one day and my life is going to have looked the same for the past 3 or 4 years. And that is my biggest fear. I hate the repetitiveness of situations and circumstances. And so I kind of feel having goals and objectives prevents that from happening. But so many people here don't believe in this concept. Like, they prefer to live day to day. And, for some people, they're able to still achieve things and do the things they want to do. For other people, their life looks the same and they're perfectly happy with that. So it's a very personal thing that when it comes to the pace of life here, I appreciate being in the present moment more, 100%. Because what is it? The past is gone, there's nothing you can do about it. The future is yet to come, it's not certain to anyone. So all we do have is this present moment, right? And a lot of the time we don't appreciate that enough because we're kind of in the past or in the future in one of those places. So I kind of do appreciate that, and it's something that I'm constantly working more towards, to be more grounded and more present in this moment. So I'm learning a lot from that pace of life. But when it comes to advancement and progress and getting things done, that's when I struggle with this whole concept of piano piano, in the moment, dopo domani, we'll do things later. It does exist here in South Italy. I'm not saying it exists everywhere in Italy. I'm not saying everybody is the same, but trust me, it does exist here. I've had experiences myself where I see it in progress. So I kind of feel that's the part I struggle with, because I do like to get things done. I'm not a talker, I'm a doer. And so that aspect is this. Now, when it comes to mindset and mentality, this part for me is a little bit complicated because from my own personal perception, it does feel like Italy is pretty insular at times. And I'm going to give you a couple of different examples to demonstrate why I think this is the case. The first example is going to be when it comes to films, TV series, like the things that people consume on a day-to-day basis. A lot of those shows come from America or from countries outside of Italy, but they are always dubbed over in Italian. It's very rare to find films and TV series shown in their original language. In fact, when they do, it's almost like an occasion at the cinema and it's presented like, in the original language as if it's something really unusual. And I do think this is a shame because I do know, having spoken to people who live here, friends, etc., that as a result, people don't really know what the voices sound like of these actors and actresses because they've been so used to hearing this dubbed over version of their voice. And I remember one time somebody saying to me they don't even know what the real voice of Tom Cruise sounds like because they've consistently heard him dubbed over in films. And for me, I think that's a shame because although it's not easy to watch a film in another language, at least having the option of subtitles and at least hearing the original audio can create a completely different experience. So there's that aspect that sometimes makes me feel that Italy can be quite insular because it doesn't try to expand itself to allow people the opportunity to embrace the English language, for example. Instead, it dubs everything over into Italian. But kind of tied into that is the English language. I am an English teacher here after all, so I feel like I have quite a bit of experience over the past 6 years in terms of how my own students have been and the observations that I've made. And it is really safe to say that English is taught absolutely terribly here in the majority of schools. And that is why private language schools are so successful here. That is why people seek out online courses because there are so many people, young people now and also grown adults who have had an absolutely terrible experience learning English, and as a result they grow up unable to really communicate in this language. And yet as you get older you realize that employers are starting to look for people that can speak English, and even university places, some of those are dependent on you having an English certification. So it starts to become more apparent that actually you kind of close yourself off if you cannot speak a language which for the most part is an international one that's spoken. And so it is those aspects that sometimes make me feel it is a very insular here. There isn't a lot of focus given sometimes on learning a language that is going to provide these external opportunities, but also on just opening up people's minds a little bit and seeing, and experiencing what goes on outside of Italy. Now, tied into that is, of course, the way people behave here. This is something that I really, really struggle with, particularly here in Palermo. I speak about it a lot. The rubbish situation, the people that treat the pavements as if they are open toilets. The way that people are really out for themselves, from the way that they drive to the lack of consideration they have for other people when it comes to parking and obstructing things and driving at you as you're crossing the road. And it does feel very difficult sometimes with the mentality and mindset of some people here. And, I don't know, I struggle a bit with that. Also, just the mindset when it comes to opportunities as well. There are so many people here who, particularly here in the South, they've had it drilled into them from a very young age that the South doesn't have any opportunity. The opportunities lie in the North or outside of Italy altogether. And so as such, people almost have this kind of resigned attitude to their life. They almost grow up believing, okay, my life's going to be difficult, this is how it's going to be. What am I going to do about it, basically? And so it's really difficult sometimes coming here because I do see things from a different perspective. I do see potential here. I do see that actually this country has so many beautiful aspects to it that sometimes I don't even think the country itself recognises. So for me, overall, if I'm going to look at kind of the way of life from both the slow pace of life and the mindset and mentality, overall, I'm going to give this a 3 out of 5 because I learn a lot from concentrating on the slower pace of life and really kind of bringing that beauty into my current life. But then at the same time, I struggle with sometimes what feels like quite closed-minded mindsets and attitudes, and how even though people can be quite friendly, they don't necessarily show respect for other people in terms of public spaces and the way they conduct themselves in public. So yeah, for me, this is a 3 out of 5. When it comes to shops and services, I actually really like the way that shops are here in South Italy especially, because there is a real focus on the independent traders, and this is something that in the UK is really lacking. Like, there is a big drive to try to rejuvenate the high streets in the UK because so many shops are closing, and you've got the big giant chain stores that are literally swallowing up the high streets and the independent shops that are included in that. And so to come to a country where there is a real focus on having an independent butchers and an independent fishmongers and an independent greengrocers and an independent hardware shop is actually really wonderful. Now, from a practical perspective, yes, of course, it does make your shopping experience longer when you have to go into and out of these individual shops to get the things you need, but the level of service is next to none in the majority of shops. Customer care can be a bit hit and miss here in Italy, but if you find a good person in one of these businesses, they will make you feel so welcome. And the thing that I really, really like is that people in these independent shops know their stuff. Like, they are skilled, they can help you. You can go in there with a question and immediately, or very soon after you've asked it, you've got your answer. And that's something that can be lacking in bigger department stores where they sell everything. Like, people are not trained to know each and every department inside out. And so I really do appreciate the individual shops here, and that is something that I love and something that I wish the UK kind of embraced more, because I feel like in the UK we are reversing that tradition and we are focusing more on the big department stores, right? So I love that aspect. And when it comes to like services and the things that you can do, you can find everything you need here. Like, it's super good in that respect. You have the big malls, you have the outlets if you want to buy designer things a little bit cheaper, you have like the big DIY shops, you have your high streets with all your normal shops on, your open markets. There's everything that you could need. Of course, this really depends on where you live in Italy. In the smaller towns and villages, maybe you have to travel a little bit to find more services, but predominantly in a big city, you've literally got everything you could need. And I really do love the shopping system here. There are differences, of course, like if we're gonna go to the services aspect and talk about like hairdressers, for example, well, watch this video up here if you want to hear my hair journey, because it's a bit of a horror show, but here in Italy anyway, but I will say that it's just a different experience, and a lot of these factors require you to change a little bit the way that you think about things. If you want to have things instantly, if you want to have the convenience, yes, of course, a lot of people here shop on Amazon. That's how you can have everything immediately. But if you want the specialist knowledge and if you want to have the real experience, you go into these independent traders and you go to the open markets and you experience things in that way. It's actually really beautiful. So I'm going to give this a 4 out of 5 because I do like the focus on independent traders, and I think it's something that cannot be replaced. So 4 out of 5 for how happy the shops and services make me here. When it comes to leisure activities, these make me really happy here in South Italy because there are lots of local traditional festivals and events that take place throughout the year that teach you more about a particular city or region of Italy. And these I really, really appreciate. And so for me, this is a really wonderful way for me to learn more about Italy and to learn more about the food and the customs and everything else that goes into this country. So that's a really, really beautiful thing. I also like the fact that on the first Sunday of every month, there is free entry given to a lot of cultural places of interest in different regions in Italy. So that's another really, really beautiful thing that I appreciate as well. And I like the fact that there are just so many places of historical importance that you can discover here. And that's a really beautiful thing. I am somebody who loves to go exploring. I like to discover new places and learn things about where I live and places close to where I live. And so I do find that here in Italy, there is a lot that you can do. You do have to research it though. One thing I will say about the leisure activities here, they're not always very well advertised. You have to know where to go. And I'm actually going to put a couple of links below in the show notes of some websites that I use to really understand what is happening in different parts of Italy. And so you can use that if you're planning to visit Italy and you want to understand what's happening at the time that you're here, because honestly, they're not always very well advertised. And if they are advertised, it's usually just in that immediate area. So if you're planning to travel somewhere, you may not even know about it. So go check out the links that I'll put below in the show notes. But I do find there is a lot to do here if you know about it and you know where to go and you get talking to people. Like, you know, people always tell you, oh, have you heard about this? We've got this happening, blah, blah, blah. There is a lot to keep you entertained here, and it does depend where you are in Italy, absolutely. For sure, Palermo has more going on than Salerno did, absolutely. But it's a place that you can always find something to do. And so for me, this is again another 4 out of 5, because I like the fact that I can keep myself busy and that I have the opportunity to discover more about this particular part of Italy. Bureaucracy. Of course, I had to mention this aspect because when you live in Italy, you cannot escape it. Now, bureaucracy is one of the hardest things, in my personal opinion, about living here in Italy, regardless of where in Italy you live. I have to admit, the further south you go, especially here in Palermo, it tends to get worse. But it's difficult nevertheless wherever you are in Italy. And so I think for me, I find it difficult how antiquated the system is, how there is such a dependency on paper and documents like this rather than computers, considering we are in 2024 at the time of filming. And so that aspect I struggle with. I struggle with the fact that people don't communicate to each other. One office doesn't know what the other office is doing. There is this constant confusion, and this I really find difficult. So I think for me personally, bureaucracy is the one thing that you have to have some kind of inner strength around, because it will absolutely break you if you're not ready for it. So for me, I'm going to give it just half a flag out of 5, because I have to give it something. Half a flag out of 5 for how happy it makes me. The half is for the fact that once you've done it, you have this great sense of relief. And that is when I'm happy. But the whole process of doing things here, it's long, it's unnecessary half of the time. A lot more could be done online with systems that actually work than what actually happens. And that's why I get this whole mentality of things here being like 20 years in the past, because it's impossible that a lot of these things can't be done online. Like, it's impossible. You have to keep giving up half a morning to go to different offices to do things, you know? So for me, half a flag out of 5 for how happy the bureaucracy makes me feel here in Italy. So when it comes to people here in Italy, this is an interesting aspect because I feel it's very multifaceted. I think your perception of people here is going to be a very personal one, based on your character, based on your experiences, based on what you're doing here in Italy and your ability to communicate. There are so many aspects that play into this. But from my personal experience, I have found the people here to be really welcoming. They've always helped me. They've always been available for me. And I have never really felt uncomfortable more than just like a couple of times, because of course you do have people here that are not the best as well. Like, this is not a fairy tale here. But I think the thing that I have found most difficult has been sometimes like trying not to feel like an outsider, because it does happen sometimes. It doesn't happen all the time, but you will be in situations sometimes where you definitely feel like you are separate or different from other people. And it's not to say this from like a victim mentality, but it's just the reality. Like, there is always going to be a point of difference between you and somebody from Italy. Like, that's a fact. You can't run away from it. And I feel that that can be really difficult sometimes. You do notice a difference. Maybe it's the fact that, you know, your family isn't as close as the families here in Italy, or, you know, you have a different mindset, a different way of life to the people here in Italy, or you're doing something different at a particular age compared to what people in Italy do. There are always going to be factors that make you feel a little bit different, odd, strange, whatever it may be, to people here in Italy. It's just life, isn't it? And yeah, for this, sometimes it can be difficult. It can be difficult to make friends here. In fact, I speak about it in this video up here if you fancy digging a bit deeper into this particular aspect. Friendships here take time. You can have polite interactions with people, absolutely. But if you want a solid friendship, that takes a lot of time because Italian people need to be sure about you. And also they already have often quite large circles of friends from like school or childhood. So they're not actively seeking necessarily new connections in the same way as the connections they already have. So I feel like it's a really complicated process, the kind of forming connections and relationships with people here in whatever context it may be. And just because people here lead busy lives, they have families, they work, they're trying to juggle a bit of a social life in the middle of all of it, it's not as easy to really get to know people here as maybe some people will lead you to believe. And so for me, I'm going to give this like a 3.5 out of 5 because I have been fortunate. I know people here now. I feel very loved and, you know, I'm very blessed in that sense. But I have to be honest, like it wasn't always this way. And there are many moments where I feel very different and isolated sometimes. And so that's why it's a 3.5 out of 5 because it's not easy to adapt to a different culture when your own is often quite different. So yeah, that's how happy kind of people here make me feel, like 3.5 out of 5. But kind of tied into that, I don't think other people should determine your happiness anyway, just to be really clear. It does come from within. But as we are talking about the aspects of life connected to Italy, this is the reason why I kind of put this segment into the video. So if you enjoyed this video, I think you're going to enjoy this one right here. This video here just goes a bit deeper into some of the lessons that living here in Italy over the past 6 years has taught me because, you know, I do believe it's like an ever evolving journey. So I'll see you in the next video.